Howdy, welcome to the channel. I know attention spans are fried right now, so I'll get right to the point. So if you read the title, you probably know what I'm going to be talking about. So yeah, if you watched my previous video, which was on how to abolish the class disparity, at least to an extent, you might understand a bit what I'm talking about right now. Because essentially human greed and economics go hand in hand. That's just a fact at this point. And I'm going to be talking about this more so from a societal lens than an individual lens. But yeah, let's get right back into it. Essentially, to limit human greed, you need to make it so that they are not incentivized or are incapable of hoarding material beyond their own proportions, right? And I did speak about this in my previous video. You can go check that out if you want. But yeah, I brought up the point that a way to prevent something like billionaires from arising and horrible class disparities between people is to cap income at a certain point, saying, y'all can't make more than, say, $400,000 a year. Anything more than that goes back to the community. And is then invested by said community, right? There are, of course, a few other ways, which I'm going to bring up now, which is that essentially human greed arises from an unchecked amount of, I would say, euphoria from a surplus of resources. Because at the end of the day, the goal isn't necessarily to hurt other people by hoarding your resources. It's just to hoard them at any means necessary. And as a result, you develop an obscene apathy towards essentially anyone lower class and anyone who has anything, essentially, because you don't care about them anymore. You just care about getting your fix, that being money, right? Because at the end of the day, greed is an addiction, and unless it's limited, it's going to keep consuming your life, just like cigarettes. However, you're actually a lot more likely to live longer if you're richer. And for the record, don't smoke, kids. Just putting that out there. I actually did smoke as a teenager. Not good for your lungs. I did quit about a year ago, but sorry, that's besides the point, hon. But essentially, though, greed is an addiction. And the best way to prevent an addiction is to make sure you don't come into contact with that substance in a substantial amount or at all. Again, you can't really hoard an obscene amount of resources if your income is capped at a certain point. Say $400,000 a year adjusted for inflation. And, this is on the high end. I would probably just say like 200,000 if I was being realistic, but essentially say $400,000 adjusted for inflation. It makes it so that the money that you can hoard is a set amount and a set growth. And it makes it so that there is no benefit to taking advantage of other people, at least past a certain point, to gain you more of a resource, right? I guess in a way of putting this into an analogy, if you can only legally have up to 3 packs of cigarettes a year, then you're not going to start spending more and more money on cigarettes because A, you didn't have as much to get addicted to. Not to say you can't get addicted to cigarettes from that much. I do not recommend you start. This is just an analogy. But you have less to get addicted to, and you are also incapable of pursuing that addiction further without going to illegal means to do so. And it's a lot easier to regulate whether or not somebody's going to have an obscene amount of money coming in than if they're going to have some cigarettes, right? And yeah, essentially though, yeah, greed is an addiction, and the only way you can plausibly prevent it from arising is to make sure that everybody has a cap set in place so they can't exceed a certain financial limit, which goes for everyone, mind you, within that society, as well as making sure that when possible everyone's needs are met instead of prioritizing the gain of individuals, right? Because another thing that causes greed to develop is the lack of resources, at least initially, right? Because if you go your entire life, right, so you are in poverty, you can't really afford food, and you don't have a lot, you tend to turn to another coping mechanism, right? That being, for example, cigarettes, right? As an addiction to take your mind off of the shitty living situation. As a result of not having your necessities and resources, you're much more likely as a successful individual, once if you do become successful further on, to hoard those resources because you are afraid of what can happen. Mind you, you're also a lot more likely if you're just a privileged asshole because that's all you've really ever known and you don't know how to live without said privilege. But that's besides the point. I'm sorry. I do these videos unscripted, so if they sound a bit off, then there is that. Yeah, that's really all I had to say. Thank you very much for watching, and I'm gonna be trying to post daily, so yeah, I guess thank you for watching, and I don't know, go kill a politician or something. I don't know.